stay away from bigger, more popular, I guess, criminals, just because one, a lot of people have done them, and two, a lot of people already know the story. But this case has always been, or this person, I should say, has always been very interesting to me. And so I thought that it would be fun to start off the month with a bigger known or more well-known criminal. So I'm going to be referring to my notes, which are over here to my left. Hope you don't mind. And let's get started. So, like I said before, Jeffrey Dahmer is one of the most well-known criminals, at least in the United States. From the years of 1978 to 1971, he was a serial killer and a sex offender who committed the murder and dismemberment of 17 men and young boys. The article I was doing my research with said he was also known as the Milwaukee Cannibal and the Milwaukee Monster. I personally have never heard him referred to as those names, but felt it was worth mentioning. And I heard about this case before, but a couple of months ago I watched a movie called My Friend Dahmer, starring Ross Lynch, who plays Jeffrey, and the movie really focuses on his early life and his childhood and adolescence. So if you're interested in seeing everything that I'm about to tell you visually, I would recommend that movie. I watched it on Amazon Prime. Okay, so you know how I always start with the person's early life, their family, where they grew up, and things like that, because I think it always plays a huge, huge role in making the person who they became. So, Jeffrey was born on May 21st, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He was the first of two sons, so he did have a little brother. His dad was named Lionel Dahmer. He was a chemistry student when Jeffrey was born and in his early years at Marquette University. His mother's name was Joyce Annette. His mother was certainly peculiar and had a lot going on. She was very tense. She was very greedy for attention and pity. She picked fights with her husband and her family. She was also a hypochondriac and suffered from depression. And there are conflicting reports here. So there are reports that Jeffrey was deprived of attention as a carcasses. Also, you know, the fact that she then around that time became pregnant with her second child. So Jeffrey didn't always require, or I should say, he didn't always receive the attention that he required. Any young kid would require around that age. So now this is where we're going to start to get into Jeffrey's weird habits that started when he was a child. So from a very young age, Jeffrey was interested and intrigued by dead animals. It started at a young age when he would collect large insects, so like dragonflies, butterflies, etc., and he would put them in jars, which, like, I remember I used to put like lightning bugs in jars as a kid, but it got significantly more strange because he eventually started to collect animal carcasses, and he would sometimes bring his friends along with him because he thought that it was so cool and wanted them to take part as well. And then when he would find the carcass, he would either take it home or keep it in the woods, and he would dismember it. He would, according to his friends, he would take the animal apart and put the different parts in jars, and he would store those jars in his family's tool shed. And in his words, it was always because he was curious on or of how the animals fitted together. That is a quote. His father believed that the source of his animal obsession happened when he was around 4 years old. When he was 4 years old, he watched his dad remove animal bones from under their home that he found. And his father said that Jeffrey was very strangely intrigued and thrilled by the sounds that the bones made. And so, after he watched his dad do that, he started to look for bones by himself around the house because he wanted to kind of experience it again. Another strange thing to note, that as this obsession grew, there was one occasion where he decapitated the carcass of a dog before nailing the body to a tree and impaling the skull. This is all at a very young age, so that's definitely extremely concerning. Now, when Jeffrey was 6, his family moved to Doylestown, Ohio, and it was there that his younger brother was born. His parents, for whatever reason, allowed him to name the baby, and he named his brother David. That was the same year that his father finally graduated from school and became a scientist. Now, we're gonna skip forward 2 years. The Dahmers are in their dining room, sitting down, having a nice chicken dinner. And Jeffrey asked his father, randomly in the middle of the dinner, what would happen if he dipped the bones in bleach. Now, his father, a scientist, got very excited because he thought that his son was taking an interest in science. And so he actually demonstrated for Jeffrey how to safely preserve animal bones. And once Jeffrey learned how to do that, he then brought this technique into his bone and animal collecting habits. So I don't think his father really knew what he was doing, but he kind of enabled that weird obsession. From the movie, his parents were not aware of the extent of his habits or his hobbies. He kind of did it kind of hush-hush, Alright, so now let's go to his teenage years. So he went to Revere High School. From freshman year, he was seen as an outcast at this age. At 14, his liquor problems started. At 14, he began drinking beer and hard liquor in the daylight hours, so not even at night, before school, during school, and he would hide his alcohol in the lining of his jacket that he wore. There was one morning he was in class and he was secretly taking a little drink, and his classmate asked him why he was drinking so early and drinking at school, and he referred to his alcohol as his medicine. He wasn't very good at communicating with people, although he was seen by staff and his teachers as, polite enough. And they recognized that he was highly intelligent, but he had failing grades. He didn't try. Early on, he had average grades, and then as he got older, they kind of declined. He was a decent tennis player, and for a moment, he played in the high school band. So he did have a select few, friends or close acquaintances, but he was still seen as an outcast. When he reached puberty, he discovered that he was gay, but he kept it to himself. Definitely did not tell his parents. But he began to have these fantasies. So he had fantasies of, dominating, being the controlling one in a partnership, and, dominating a submissive male. And those fantasies were in his, early to late teens. And then as this continued, he realized that the part of the body that he was most attracted to was a man's chest. And then these fantasies continued to grow and turned dark. So, for example, in the area that he was living, there was a male jogger who would jog by on a regular basis, and Jeffrey recognized that he was attracted to this man. And he had fantasies of, dominating this man, and his thought was if he knocked him unconscious, he could have his way with this man. So there was literally one day where he sat in the bushes with a baseball bat and waited for him to run by so that he could live out his fantasy. But the runner, thankfully, did not run by that day. Of course, what are the odds? But that's a good thing. And that was his first actual attempt in harming someone else. So like I said, even though he was a loner and was seen as an outcast, he had a few friends that would hang around him. And this is because he kind of became like the class clown, because he knew what to do to get his peers to laugh, so he took that attention as good attention. So he would do little pranks that he would stage, and these became known as doing a Dahmer. And two of his most favorite, his favorite things to do that would get a big rise out of everybody is he would fake having a seizure, and he would fake having cerebral palsy. He would do this in school, in the middle of the hallway, or he liked to do it, in stores or at the mall, and his friends would go with him so that they could watch and get a laugh out of it. By 17 years old, this is where his grades really started to decline. His parents hired a tutor for him, but it didn't make much of a difference. That same year, his parents filed for divorce after his father found out his mother had been having a brief affair. And so once they decided to separate, their father went and temporarily lived in a hotel nearby. It was in that same year that Jeffrey also graduated high school. That spring, around the time of graduation, his mother and younger brother moved to live with family back in Wisconsin. Jeffrey was already 18 at the time, and they allowed him to stay in the family's home by himself for, at least a little while. It was 3 weeks after his high school graduation that he committed his first murder. On June 18th, he was driving in his car and saw a hitchhiker on the road. He was a young man. His name was Stephen Hicks. He was 19. He did not have a shirt on, so remember how Jeffrey feels about, men's chests. And he was on his way to a rock concert. Now, Jeffrey somehow convinced him, before I drive you to the concert, let's go back to my house. My house is free. We can have some beer and just kind of hang out before you go to the concert. But Jeffrey noted very early on that Stephen was starting to talk about girls, and so Jeffrey knew that any passes he would make on Stephen would more than likely be not met very well or not welcomed. But they ended up talking, drinking, and listening to music for several hours, and then eventually Stephen said, all right, I kind of gotta go, I got places to go. Jeffrey did not want him to leave, however. So when Stephen wasn't looking, Jeffrey hit him over the head with a 10-pound dumbbell. And then once he fell to the floor, Jeffrey strangled him with the bar of the dumbbell until he could no longer breathe. Once he was dead, Jeffrey stripped him of his clothing and had his way with him sexually. But the very next day, Jeffrey took the body down to the basement and essentially dissected his body. He buried the remains in a shallow grave he dug in the backyard. A few weeks later, he dug up those remains and dissolved the flesh in acid and flushed it down the toilet, and then crushed the bones with a sledgehammer and scattered that in the woods. So that was the story of his first murder. 6 weeks later, his father and new fiancée moved back into the house, and Jeffrey eventually enrolled at Ohio State University, hoping to major in business. But as he got older, his alcohol abuse just worsened and worsened and worsened. He had horrible grades. Get this, his GPA out of a 4.0 was 0.45. Not even half of one. So, his grades were horrendous. His father ended up making a surprise visit to his school to visit him and visit his dorm room, and when he went in Jeffrey's room, it was just littered with empty alcohol bottles. And that is when his father realized that he had a problem. And after only 3 months into school, Jeffrey dropped out. In 1979, Jeffrey's father urged him to join the army, hoping that it would kind of whip him into shape. So he trained as a medical specialist in San Antonio, Texas at first, and then a few months later he was deployed to Germany, where he served as a combat medic. In the beginning, he had a decent performance. He was seen as average by his supervisors, this performance again declined due to alcohol, and in 1981 he was discharged from the army. But they didn't see anything, like they didn't think that he would pose any harm or that he was going to cause any problems, so it was an honorable discharge. He then moved back in with his father and stepmother. Only 2 weeks later, he was arrested for drunk and disorderly conduct. He received 10 days in jail and a $60 fine. In December of that same year, his father and his stepmother realized that they couldn't deal with him anymore, and they sent him to live in Wisconsin with his grandmother. Now, out of everyone, he was, or she was the only family member that he was actually like affectionate with and seemed to really care for. So they thought that that would be a good idea, and he would want to be in better shape for his grandmother. And at first it was good. He went to church with her, he looked for a job, he followed her rules, he did drink and smoke, which she hated, but other than that, he did, chores and all that. He found work as a phlebotomist at a blood center, but was only able to hold that job for 10 months. He was then unemployed for 2 years and basically just lived off of the money that his grandmother gave him. It was around this time that he was arrested again, and this time it was for indecent exposure. He was at a park and exposed himself, and there were others present, men, women, children, and so he was arrested for that. He was fined $50, and had to pay court costs and all that. Other than that, nothing really came of that. In 1985, he got another job at a chocolate factory as a mixer, which I guess you could kind of guess what that is. That same year, he began to familiarize himself with gay bars, gay bathhouses, and bookstores in the area. If you don't know what a bathhouse is, I didn't really either, but basically it's where you go to have sex with people, essentially. Also, around this time, he stole a mannequin from a store, which he briefly used to live out more sexual fantasies, and he stored it in a closet, and his grandmother eventually found it and made him get rid of it. Anyway, so he began to go to the bathhouses quite frequently, but during his encounters, he began to get increasingly annoyed with how much his partners were moving. Like, he didn't like for them to move. So he began to put them to sleep, essentially. So he would lace their drinks with, sedatives or sleeping pills, whatever. Wait for the partner to fall asleep and then have his way with his partner. After he did this about 12 times with 12 different men, the bathhouse kind of caught wind of it and kicked him out and discontinued his membership there. But he just continued to do it. He just did it at hotels and motels instead. Later on, actually not that much later on, he was arrested yet again for lewd and lascivious behavior. So basically, he masturbated in public, and he was in the presence of 2 12-year-old boys, and so was arrested for that. Once that was dealt with, he then just fell into this pattern of luring young boys and men into either a hotel, sometimes his grandmother's house, and doing this to them. But it got worse, because not only was he drugging them and having his way with them, he then began to actually kill them as well. And if I sat here and went through the case of all 17 of his victims, this video would be like 5 hours long, so I am not going to do that necessarily. But I will in a second. I'm going to list the name of the victims just because I like to do that. I don't know, I feel like I'm like honoring the victim. I don't know. I just like, that's something I like to do in these videos. So anyway, this did happen a few times in his grandmother's house. But eventually she, you know, there were weird smells coming from different parts of the house. He was bringing random men into her house. You know, she just didn't like his behavior, so she eventually made him leave and get his own place. He was arrested yet again for drugging and sexually fondling a 13-year-old boy. His father hired a lawyer for him just to try to get his son out of trouble. He was also, you know, he had to go through many psychological tests and everything. And he was diagnosed with schizoid personality disorder. And it was also revealed that he harbored deep feelings of alienation. So there were a few of those things that kind of came to light. So now for his victims, I'm going to go through their names and their ages. So there was Stephen Hicks, who was 19. We talked about him. Stephen 𝓢𝓸𝓬𝓲𝓪, who was 26. Jamie 𝓢𝓸𝓬𝓲𝓪, who was 14. Richard Guerrero, who was 25. Anthony Sears was 26. Eddie Smith was 36. Ricky Beeks, 27. Ernest Miller, 22. David Thomas, 23. Curtis Straughter was 19. Errol Lindsay was 19. Tony Hughes was 31. 𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓲𝓪, oh boy, 𝓢𝓸𝓬𝓲𝓪 was 14. Matt Turner was 20. Jeremiah Weinberger was 23. Oliver Lacey was 23. Joseph Breithoft was 25. I don't think that's 17, but those are the names that I could find. So now I will go into kind of the last time he did this and how that led to his arrest and conviction. So basically, the last time he tried to do this, he was unsuccessful. So he was out one night. It was July 22nd, 1991. Jeffrey approached a group of 3 men and basically gave them a proposition: hey, I'll give you $100 if you come back with me and really just keep me company and drink with me and let me take nude pictures of you. One of the men, named Tracy Edwards, said sure and went back with Jeffrey. Now right away, Tracy walked into Jeffrey's apartment and noticed a very weird odor. So he was very aware of that. He also noticed boxes of hydrochloric acid all over the floor, and Jeffrey was just like, oh, that's just what I use to, you know, to clean. It's really good for cleaning brick. That's what he said. So now after just a few minutes, because maybe Tracy was kind of catching on that things were like a little fishy, Jeffrey was like, oh, like, look at that. Like, I think it was, what did he say? I think he told him to, I think he had like a fish or something nearby and was like, oh, look at my fish. And Tracy turned his head, and when he turned his head, Jeffrey attempted to handcuff him. And he was like, he basically threatened him, and he said, okay, we're going to my room now and I'm going to take nude photos of you. In Jeffrey's bedroom, Tracy saw nude male posters on the wall, and The Exorcist 3 was also playing, which is really freaky. There was a 57-gallon drum in the corner of the room, which was giving off a very, very strong odor. We will get back to that. Yes, it's what you're thinking. Jeffrey then pulled out a knife to further threaten Tracy, and again said, alright, we're going to take these pictures now. Now, Tracy was trying to keep him calm and keep him happy, and was like, okay, like, don't do anything with the knife, like, I'll unbutton my shirt for you, but like, you know, just take the handcuffs off, like, I'm not gonna run, I'm your friend, you know, just trying to keep him calm. And then, without saying anything, after Tracy said that, Jeffrey just kind of looked at the TV screen, and Tracy recalled him just like rocking back and forth, and it also sounded like he was chanting something. And then he came back to Tracy and laid his head on his chest. He listened to his heartbeat, and with the knife pressed against Tracy, he told him that he intended to eat his heart. So of course Tracy was like freaking out, but again was trying to remain as calm as possible. And you know, eventually the cuffs came off, and Tracy was like, you know, I gotta go to the bathroom. Now he has to go to the bathroom twice, and the last time he went to the bathroom, he just decided to go for it, and he punched Jeffrey in the head, knocking him off balance. Jeffrey fell, and he took that opportunity to bolt out the door. Nearby, he found 2 cops and told them what happened, and ended up bringing them back to Jeffrey's house with him. When they went to his house, they found the knife that Tracy told them about. They found an open drawer filled with Polaroid pictures of human bodies, and the bodies were in different stages of dismemberment. And they knew that Jeffrey had taken these pictures and that he was involved because the background of the pictures was the house that they were standing in, so there was no denying that something very, very bad was happening in that house. And as soon as Jeffrey saw them holding the pictures, he knew that he was screwed, and he got physical and tried to assist arrest. They very easily and quickly overpowered him, called for backup, and had him in handcuffs, but then they continued to search his house once they had him on the ground. So one cop opened up the fridge and found a freshly severed human head of a male, of course. And after he did that, Jeffrey turned his head while still on the ground and looked at another cop and said, "For what I did, I should be dead." They found 4 heads total in the kitchen. In the house as a whole, they found 7 skulls. Some were painted, some were bleached. They found blood drippings on a tray in the fridge. They found 2 human hearts. They found a portion of an arm muscle. They found an entire torso in the freezer, along with a bag of human organs, 2 entire skeletons, a pair of severed hands, preserved male body parts, and in that drum in his room was another torso dissolving in acid. So there wasn't even there was a trial, but there was no, he was the one, there was no, back and forth, did he do it, but there were obviously interviews that the police conducted with Jeffrey, over 60 hours of interviewing total. He was very open about it and wanted to confess and told them what they needed to know. He said that he had, quote, created this horror, and it only makes sense. I do everything to put an end to it. The trial itself and the sentencing lasted 2 weeks. On February 15th, the court reconvened to hear the verdict, and Dahmer was ruled to be sane and not, he didn't claim insanity or anything like that. He was tried for 15 of the murders. Jeffrey was then sentenced to life imprisonment plus 10 years upon the first 2 counts. So basically he got life in prison. I'm reading, because this part I kind wasted, and we won't go through the logistics. Basically, he got life in prison, obviously. But this was Wisconsin, and the death penalty was done away with in like the 1800s, so he did not receive the death penalty, although in other states he probably would have. He was placed in solitary confinement because, fellow inmates, they always find out what the other ones did, and they were concerned for his safety, so they put him in solitary confinement. And then with his consent, after a year, they put him in just like a regular cell with everybody else. And he was assigned to do 2 hours of work daily cleaning the bathrooms. That was his job. On the morning of November 28th, 1994, he left his cell to do his work, to go clean, and he was accompanied by 2 other inmates named Jesse Anderson and Christopher Scarver. The 3 of them were left unsupervised in the showers of the prison gym for only 20 minutes, and at around 8 to 10 in the morning, Jeffrey was discovered dead on the floor of the bathroom, suffering extreme head wounds. So basically, he was beaten to death. He had been severely bludgeoned around his head and face with a 20-inch metal bar. His head had been repeatedly hit against the wall as well. He was still alive and rushed to a nearby hospital, but within an hour he was announced dead. He stated in his will that he didn't want any services to be conducted for him and that he wanted to be cremated, so that's what happened. And in September of 1995, that's when his body was